They said no one could survive that valley. Not with the snipers, the crossfire, the open ground, but she did, and she didn't just survive, she changed the outcome. The SEALs would never forget that shot. One bullet, one ghost in the dust. A woman who was never supposed to be there. Afghanistan, 2017. The sun was sinking behind the ridgelines. Dust clung to every surface like ash, and at 200 meters away, she lay still, breathing slow, eyes narrowed, heart steady. Captain Elena Torres, 30 years old, Army combat medic. And now, on paper, also a sniper. She wasn't born into combat. She wasn't raised to kill. But something about that day changed her. Forever. A day that began like any other. Until the explosion. She was part of a routine patrol convoy headed east of Kandahar. 7 vehicles. 4 medics. Nothing out of the ordinary until the third Humvee disappeared in a blast. IED, high-grade, direct hit. Smoke filled the air, screams pierced the radios, and before anyone could even react, gunfire started tearing through the valley. Elena dropped from her seat, grabbed her med bag, and ran. No hesitation. No orders needed. Just instinct. By the time she reached the burning Humvee, 3 were already gone. But one, Private Lyles, was barely breathing, his leg shredded. She worked fast. Tourniquet, compression, morphine. Rounds snapped overhead, but she didn't flinch. She shielded him with her body. Then, she saw movement behind the smoke, an insurgent, maybe 15 meters out, approaching with an AK. He didn't see her at first. She reached for the nearest rifle, dropped by a fallen soldier, raised it, hands trembling, and fired. 1 shot. He dropped. Her first confirmed kill. She had come to save lives, not take them, but in that moment, she realized something. She couldn't save anyone if she was dead, and she couldn't always wait for others to do the protecting. Something clicked that day. Something cold. Something necessary. Later in the debrief, she was silent. The others praised her, called her a hero, but she didn't feel like one. That night, she couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt, but because of clarity. She kept hearing the gunfire, yes. Kept seeing the blood. But most of all, she remembered how steady her hands had been. Not shaking, not sweating, just controlled. The Army psychologist said it was adrenaline, maybe even shock. But she knew better. She'd felt something else, a kind of focus she hadn't known she possessed. A kind of purpose that went beyond just reacting, beyond just patching up wounds. That night, she opened a book her father once gave her, On Killing, by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He'd underlined a sentence. The will to survive is not as important as the will to prevail. She stared at that line for hours. By sunrise, she had already submitted her request. A transfer to Advanced Marksmanship School. No one took it seriously at first. A medic, wanting sniper training, it was unheard of. The first application was denied. So was the second. But on her third attempt, her packet landed on the desk of a retired Navy SEAL instructor, Commander Ray Holland. He saw the report from Kandahar, saw the kill, saw the restraint, and requested to meet her. Their first conversation was short. He handed her a rifle, pointed to a target 600 meters away, said, "If you miss, this is over." She hit center mass, then headshot, then 5 rounds through the same hole. He said nothing, just nodded. 2 weeks later, she was accepted. No one in her medic unit knew what she was training for. She said she was on leave, but she wasn't resting, she was transforming. Her days started before sunrise. Range work, breathing drills, wind calls, ballistics memorization. At night, she reviewed case files, targets, patterns, behaviors. She approached shooting like she approached medicine. Study. Understand. Execute. Others trained to kill. She trained to prevent. That was the difference, and that would one day make her unforgettable. But she didn't know it yet. She didn't know that within a year, she'd be the only one standing between a SEAL team and certain death. She didn't know the exact moment she'd make the shot no one believed possible. She didn't know she was about to become a legend. All she knew was that next time, no one would die on her watch. She wasn't always this way. Before the battlefield, Elena Torres was just a girl from San Antonio. She grew up in a quiet neighborhood, front porch, Sunday dinners, a father who always stood for the flag, even in the living room. Her father, Luis Torres, was a Vietnam veteran, decorated, respected. But he never spoke much about the war. Only once did she hear him say, "We didn't all come home. Some of us just kept walking." Elena never asked him what that meant, not until years later. She was 16 when she decided she'd serve, not because of glory, not because of duty, but because of a moment. A school bus accident outside town. Dozens injured. One nurse on the scene before ambulances arrived. Elena watched from a distance, watched that nurse stop the bleeding, calm the children, lead people through the chaos like she was born for it. That image burned itself into her mind. She didn't want to just stand and watch. She wanted to act. Her father supported her, but made her promise one thing. Whatever you do, don't lose yourself in the job. War takes more than bullets, she promised. And for a long time, she kept that promise. Elena enlisted at 19, Medical Corps Basic at Fort Jackson, advanced training at Fort Sam Houston. She was top of her class, precise, fast, calm under pressure. Her instructors said she had cold nerves and a warm heart, perfect for combat medicine. In her first tour, she served in a mobile surgical team near Mosul. No frontline engagements, just stabilization work, gunshot wounds, shrapnel, burns. She learned to stitch with shaking hands in moving trucks, learned to ignore her own fear, learned how to look death in the face and say, "Not today." The soldiers respected her. Some called her Doc, others Angel. But Elena didn't care about nicknames. She cared about numbers, how many lives saved, how many hours without a casualty, how many soldiers walked away from the edge because she stood there first. But on her second tour, everything changed. The convoy ambush outside Kandahar wasn't the first time she saw death, but it was the first time she caused it. That single shot, the insurgent with the AK, that wasn't in the manual. That wasn't part of the job. The Army reviewed the footage. She was cleared, self-defense, but no one asked what it did to her because it didn't haunt her. It woke her up. That night, she wrote in her journal, "I used to think I was only meant to treat wounds. Now I wonder if I'm meant to stop them before they ever happen." Her commanding officer noticed the change. She started requesting more field time, volunteered for patrols, carried extra gear, started watching the horizon differently, like she was already expecting the worst. She wasn't chasing combat. She was preparing for it. Then one day she went to the range, not part of her usual training, just curiosity. She picked up a rifle, fired a few rounds. Every single one hit center mass. A passing instructor paused, watched, then handed her a sniper rifle. Told her, "Try this." She fired again. The grouping was tight, precise, almost surgical. He raised an eyebrow and asked, "You ever trained before?" She shook her head. He didn't believe her. Word spread fast. A medic who could shoot like a seasoned marksman. But still, the Army had rules. Medics didn't transfer into sniper roles. It just wasn't done. She applied anyway. Rejected. Applied again. Rejected again. Then came Commander Ray Holland, retired SEAL, brought in to consult on a joint task force. He heard about Elena from an old friend in logistics, asked to see her file, read it cover to cover, then requested a demonstration. She met him on a dusty range outside base. He didn't say much, just pointed to a series of targets, each farther than the last. She hit everyone, not just hit, grouped, tight, consistent, dead center. He watched her reload, smooth, efficient, no wasted movement, Then he finally spoke. "You're not just a shooter. You're a surgeon with a rifle." She didn't smile, just nodded. 2 weeks later, she was on a plane to a special training facility. No one knew where, no insignia, no rank, just candidates and rifles. It was cold, grueling. Most didn't make it through. But Elena did, because this wasn't about proving herself to others. This was about making sure no one under her care ever bled out again. She wasn't angry, she wasn't vengeful, she was focused on what her father once said. War takes more than bullets. And now she knew what he meant, because to truly save lives in a war like this, you had to be willing to end some. Her boots hit the ground before the sun came up. The training compound wasn't marked on any map. No base flag, no unit patch, just dirt, steel, and silence. This wasn't Army standard training. This was the kind of program they didn't advertise. Run by veterans, for candidates who didn't fit the mold. She was the only woman in her class, and the only medic. They didn't care what she used to be. Not here. Here, you were what you could prove. Day after day, shot after shot. Elena's first test came within hours of arrival. Assemble a rifle blindfolded, under 2 minutes. No excuses. She failed the first time. 1 bolt off. Too slow. The instructor said nothing. Just reset the timer. She did it again. This time in 94 seconds. Passed. By the end of week 1, 5 candidates had washed out. 1 threw up from the pressure. Another froze during the cold water stress drill. They were gone by sunrise. Elena stayed. The instructors started noticing something strange. She didn't get rattled, didn't snap at failure, didn't celebrate success. She moved through each challenge like a machine, but one powered by memory. Every move she made was deliberate, calculated, almost clinical. They tested her in urban environments, jungle terrain, high-altitude cold. She adapted fast. No complaints. No drama. One of the instructors, a former Marine Scout sniper, watched her during a stalking exercise. She covered 2 miles of open terrain without being spotted, through thick brush, mud, and wire. When she took her final shot, the observer flinched. Not because she hit the target, but because it was a perfect eye shot from 600 yards. Afterward, he asked her, "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" She simply said, "I used to work with a scalpel," then walked off. It wasn't bravado. It was fact. She didn't shoot like a soldier. She shot like someone who understood the body inside and out, where it bled, where it broke, and where it ended. But training wasn't just about shooting. They broke them mentally, too. Sleep deprivation. Simulated capture. Interrogation stress drills. No names, no ranks, just numbers and silence. When it was her turn, they put her in a room. No windows, freezing, flashing lights and noise played on a loop. Others cracked in 4 hours. She lasted 17. Didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't speak. She just stared straight ahead, breathing slow, controlling her body like she used to control bleeding. When they let her out, one of the instructors muttered, "She's colder than most of the guys we've sent behind enemy lines." But Elena wasn't cold. She just remembered. Remembered the convoy, the blood, the helplessness. And she was building something inside, layer by layer, a new version of herself, not one that replaced the medic, but one that evolved from it. By week 6, she was out shooting most of the class. Moving faster, shooting cleaner, still silent. One candidate tried to make small talk during chow. Asked her, "What makes a medic want to become a killer?" She didn't even look up, just said, "Because sometimes stopping the bleeding means stopping the cause." No one bothered her after that. She wasn't interested in proving she belonged. She already knew she did. When the final test came, only 9 of them were left. A field op simulation, 72 hours, no sleep, no resupply, real weather, real pressure. They had to track a moving target across 20 miles of mountainous terrain. Locate ID and take the shot. One by one, the others missed. Either failed the shot or broke radio silence. But not Elena. She moved like fog. A ghost on the ridgeline. No trace. No sound. She found the target on hour 51, 2,000 feet below her, wind at her side, rain starting to fall. She calculated everything. Distance, wind drift, humidity, then fired once, hit center chest. When she returned to base, soaked and muddy, the instructors didn't speak. Just nodded. She had passed. Commander Holland waited for her in the debrief room. He looked up from the file, smiled faintly, and said, "You're not just good. You're reliable. That's rarer than talent." Then he slid a folder across the table. No name, just an operation code, classified.urgent. He said, "Pack your gear. You're being pulled early. There's a situation in Helmand." She opened the folder, a photo of a SEAL team, 12 operators, mission gone dark, surrounded, low chance of survival. He looked her in the eye. "You'll go in alone. They don't know you're coming. If you fail, they all die." She nodded once. No fear, no hesitation. She didn't ask why her. She already knew, because sometimes it didn't take a squad. Sometimes it only took one person. One medic with a rifle, one bullet, one mission, and she was ready. The chopper door opened to nothing but black. No landing zone, no flare, just the hiss of wind and the faint glow of fire miles away. They dropped her at 300, 2 clicks from the last known position of the SEAL team. 12 elite operators, now completely cut off. No comms, no GPS, no rescue window. Helmand Province had become a graveyard for units like hers. The terrain was unforgiving. Sharp rocks, narrow valleys, sniper heaven. And that night, it wasn't heaven. It was hell. She moved fast but silent. No radio, no backup. Only a satellite map burned into her memory and a compass clipped to her chest rig. She kept low, used dry creek beds for cover, avoided the paths the Taliban expected soldiers to take. By dawn, she was within half a mile. She found drag marks, blood in the dirt, SEAL boots, 2 sets, 1 limping. She scanned the ridge, wind high, visibility low, then she saw it, a glint, scope, reflection. 700 meters east ridge, enemy sniper, watching the valley, waiting. She dropped. To prone, adjusted her bipod and found him in her scope, breathing. Steady. Then one breath, one squeeze, and silence. Target down. She moved again, climbed the ridge. Rocks tore through her gloves, but she didn't stop. At 300 meters, she found the first body. SEAL, early 20s, KIA, but his gear was stripped. Someone had used it to patch up another. That meant at least one was still alive. She pressed forward, then heard it. Distant voices, not English. She dropped flat, listened. 6 insurgents, moving downhill, following the same trail she just climbed. If they reached the wounded first, it was over. She didn't have time to reposition. She had to act now. She steadied her aim, one by one. 6 shots. 6 bodies hit the ground before they could fire a single round. No time to check. She ran. Her rifle felt heavier now. So did her heart, because this wasn't just a mission anymore. This was survival. By late afternoon, she reached a small cave mouth, half hidden behind boulders. Inside, 3 SEALs, 1 unconscious, 1 gut shot, 1 barely holding it together. The conscious one raised his rifle when he saw her. Stopped. His eyes widened. "You're not with us," he said. She nodded. "I'm here to get you out." He looked at her gear, at her medical bag slung under the rifle. "You a medic or a sniper?" She looked at the wounded man. Both. She went to work. No hesitation, no wasted motion. She sealed the gut wound, stabilized vitals, pushed fluids, applied a pressure bandage, then turned to the unconscious SEAL, found he had a collapsed lung. She pulled a needle from her kit, punctured the chest. Air hissed out. The man gasped awake. The one still holding a rifle just stared at her. He said, "You're not real." but she was. By nightfall, she'd built a perimeter of traps using wire, flare charges, and debris. Then she waited. The insurgents returned just after midnight. 12 of them, looking for their fallen men. She was ready. They tripped the first wire. Flare lit the sky. She fired from the shadow of a broken wall. They didn't know where it came from. She moved, fired again. Different angle. Then again. 3 down. 4, 5. The rest tried to flank. She pulled a smoke grenade from her belt, rolled it left, then moved right. They fired at shadows. She fired at silhouettes. By 0100, it was over. No more movement, no more sound. The SEAL looked at her from behind cover. "You just did the job of 10 men, he said. She replied, "You needed one who wouldn't miss." At dawn, a medevac finally broke through the cloud cover. When they landed, the crew expected to find bodies. Instead, they found 3 injured SEALs and 1 woman, covered in dirt, hands stained with blood, eyes steady. The pilot asked, "Who's she?" The SEAL just said, "The reason we're alive." As the bird lifted, Elena looked out over the valley, smoke rising, sunlight cutting through the dust. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just breathed. The mission was over, for now. But something had changed in her again, not just the way she fought, the way she felt. She wasn't a medic anymore. Not just. She was the weapon they never saw coming, and she was only getting started. The wind in the valley was cruel. It shifted without warning, carrying dust, smoke, and the scent of something burning. Elena lay flat against the cold stone ledge, her rifle steady, her heartbeat slower than most could manage under fire. Below her, chaos unfolded in patterns she could read like a surgeon's chart. 7 Taliban fighters. They moved quickly, but not quietly. They didn't know they were being hunted. Not yet. She scanned the terrain, marked her distances. 3. At 200 meters near the broken truck. 2. Behind cover near the rock wall. And 2. Flanking left, moving toward the cave, toward the SEALs, toward her. Patience. That's what they still were to her. Not targets. Not assets. Patience. She exhaled. Finger rested on the trigger. The wind shifted again. She adjusted 2 clicks left, then fired. The first man dropped instantly. Clean shot. Temple. She cycled the bolt, realigned, and fired again. Second man collapsed beside the truck. The ones behind the rock wall scrambled, unsure where the shots came from. They didn't know she had climbed 90 feet up the cliff during the night. Didn't know she'd mapped every cover point by moonlight. Another breath, another shot. By the time they fired back, she was already crawling left, 5 meters. From her last position, the sound of their gunfire echoed off. Stone wild, desperate, useless. She found a new angle. Waited. Watched. 1. Enemy peeked around the wall, his shoulder barely visible. She didn't need more, she squeezed. He fell back. Lifeless. The last 2 panicked, began to retreat. She let them run. 5 seconds. 10. Then picked off one as he crossed open ground. The last vanished. Behind a dune. Too far. Too fast. She marked the direction, then checked her surroundings. Clear. She descended from her perch. Fast and silent. No wasted movement. The rifle slung tight. Her boots barely touched the ground. When she reached the cave again, the SEALs were waiting, wide-eyed. The one still conscious just shook his head. "You moved like a damn ghost." She didn't respond. She was already checking the wounded, vitals stable. Bleeding under control, but they were weak, running out of time. She radioed in, brief and cold, site secure. 3 wounded. 1 requires immediate evac. The voice on the other end sounded stunned. "Confirm? Secure?" She answered, "All targets neutralized. Confirm LZ for extraction." There was a pause, then a reply. "Roger. Bird en route. ETA 20 minutes. She looked at the SEALs. "You've got 1 chance to walk out of here." They nodded. No questions, no arguments. She moved to the ridge to mark the LZ. But something felt wrong. too quiet, too still. She scanned the hills, then spotted it, a glint, far west. High. Up sniper, at least 1,200 meters out, positioned for one shot. The bird was coming straight into his sights. There was no time to warn them. No one else had eyes on that angle. She dropped to prone, adjusted, her scope, dialed for distance, estimated wind speed. This wasn't standard Army doctrine. This was instinct. Training, calm precision under impossible pressure. Her breathing slowed. Her vision narrowed. Time stretched. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips. The moment froze. She exhaled and fired. The shot rang out like thunder across the valley. Then, silence. No return fire, no movement. She waited, watched, then, confirmation. A body slumped sideways. Scope still shining. The pilot's voice came over the radio seconds later. Enemy sniper down. We're clear for approach. She didn't smile, didn't speak. Just lowered her rifle. The helicopter thundered overhead, blades slicing through dust and wind. It landed just feet from the cave. The SEALs were lifted one by one. Grateful, half-conscious, one. Of them grabbed her hand before being loaded. "In, don't know who you are," he said. "But I owe you my life," she nodded, then turned. She didn't climb. Into the bird with them, not yet. She walked the perimeter once more, checked every angle, made sure they were clear. Only. Then did she board. The crew chief looked her over. "Sniper team?" he asked. She shook her head. "Medic." He blinked, then looked at the sniper rifle in her hands, but he didn't. Press. They lifted off. The valley dropped away, and the dust settled behind them. One shot had saved them all, a shot no one believed could be made, but she made it because she wasn't just a shooter. She wasn't just a medic. She was something else now. Something the enemy wouldn't see coming. Again. And for the SEALs on that chopper, she wasn't a ghost anymore. She was legend. The flight back was silent. No one spoke. Not the medics, not the pilots, not the SEALs. They all just looked at her, not with fear, not even with awe, with something else, respect, maybe, or disbelief. She sat near the open bay door, wind ripping through her hair, blood dried on her sleeves, her rifle rested across her knees, still warm from the last shot. One of the SEALs, now bandaged and stable, broke the silence. "What's your name?" She glanced at him. "Elena." No last name. She didn't answer, not because she was hiding it, but because, in moments like this, names didn't matter, only actions. The helicopter landed at a forward outpost near Lashkar Gah. She didn't wait for applause, didn't stand for a medal. She walked straight into the medical tent and handed over her notes. Vitals, blood types, injuries, treatments, exact, precise, unshaken. The field surgeon raised an eyebrow. "You're the one who brought them out?" She nodded. 3 alive. 4th KIA. Extraction complete. "You did all this alone?" Again, she nodded. He looked at the chart, then at her. "Who trained you?" She just said the right people. Word traveled fast. By sundown, her name was known across 4 units, but not like a rumor, more like a warning. "Watch for her," they said. "She's not what she looks like." She should have gone home after that. Mission protocol demanded debrief, psychological evaluation, time off. But she refused. She asked for another assignment, not because she wanted glory, but because she had seen what happened when good men died. For lack of one good shot, she didn't want that. Again, within a week, she was reassigned, not to a sniper unit, not to a medical team, but to a shadow squad. Black Ops, no official record, no chain of command, only objectives. Her first briefing came in a tent with no lights, only a projector, a series of faces. Target, list, high value. Terror finance, chemical weapons, foreign intelligence. Her mission was simple: confirm, locate, eliminate. She wasn't surprised. She just asked for a map. The man running the briefing, former CIA, watched her for a long moment. "You're not like the others," he said. said. No, she replied. I'm not. Over. The next 6 months, she moved between countries. Iraq, Yemen, Libya. No. Official documentation, just flight manifests that disappeared after landing. She traveled light, 1 bag, 1 rifle, 1 med. Kit. Sometimes she worked alone, sometimes with a team that didn't know her name. In Mosul, she neutralized a chemical weapons courier from 900 meters in high wind. The shot went through a window the size of a mailbox. In Somalia, she saved a hostage with a single bullet, as he was, being dragged from a van. Fired from a rooftop, target moving, no second chance. And in Syria, she disappeared behind enemy lines for 10 days. No contact, no updates. They thought she was dead until a drone picked up her signal, beacon, and found her walking alone through the desert, with 6 prisoners of war trailing behind her, all rescued, all alive. No one asked how she did it. They just logged it as mission complete. The only person who ever pushed her was Commander Holland. He met her in a temporary safe house near Erbil. You keep this up, he said, you'll either end up dead or in a file no one reads. He looked at him. I didn't come here to be remembered. He sighed. You came to end things before they start. She nodded. That's right. He leaned forward. You've crossed a line. Elena, you're not a medic anymore. You're not even a sniper. She didn't flinch. What am I then? He looked at her like someone staring at a weapon too dangerous to use, but too effective to ignore. You're the quiet answer to every loud problem. She stood. I'll take that. Later that night, alone in her quarters, she opened the envelope marked, Classified, eyes only, a new target, this one, different. Not a warlord, not a financier, but a defector, American-born, former military, selling. Secrets, training enemies, and worse, he knew sniper. Tactics, knew how to disappear, knew how to fight someone like her. She closed the file. This mission would be different, because for the first time, she wasn't hunting just any threat. She was hunting someone who had once worn the same uniform, and that meant only one of them was coming back. He studied the file until the edges blurred. The man's name was Aaron Beckett, former Army Ranger, turned traitor, turned mercenary instructor. Photos showed a hard jaw, a scar along the brow, eyes that always looked like they were calculating the next move. What made the file worse wasn't his skill. It was his history. He had trained soldiers Elena once trusted. He had taught techniques she used. He had taught them to disappear. The mission briefing was short and clinical. Find him in a coastal town that smelled of diesel and fish. Confirm his identity. Terminate if necessary. She read the words, terminate. The word felt heavier on paper than in the tent light. She thought of her father's warning. Don't lose yourself in the job. She thought of the surgeon's hands she'd once steadied on an operating table. She thought of the SEALs in the cave who'd called her a ghost and a savior within hours. Now she was to hunt a man who'd once worn the same cloth. Her approach was patient. She shadowed local markets, learned which cafe he favored, traced his supply chain back through 3 safe houses. Beckett moved like a predator who believed the world owed him concealment. He wore NATO gear but traded in secrets for coin. He trusted no one. That made him precise and dangerous. On day 4, she found him, a rooftop overlooking the harbor, cigarette smoke curling into a pale sky, his back to her. He was older than the file suggested, shoulders a little stooped, hands steady on a pair of binoculars. She watched him through a broken skylight and did what she always did. Measure, calculate, prepare. The angle was not perfect. Crosswind from the sea, mirrors of sunlight on water, urban clutter between them. Impossible by most measures, but impossible had never stopped her. She set up her rifle on a low parapet and dialed the scope. Distance, 900 meters. Wind, 8 knots left. She adjusted. For Coriolis, for humidity, for the slight tremor in her own forearm. She thought of the convoy in Kandahar, the Humvee, the IED the first time the world split into before and after. She thought of the seam between medic and marksman, how fine it had become. When she squeezed the trigger the first time, Beckett did not fall. The round struck a pipe behind him, showering sparks. He dropped his binoculars and spun, eyes wild. He could not believe a woman would shoot at him from that angle. He could not believe the shot had not been fatal. She fired again. This time the round clipped the radio at his hip and severed its antenna. Beckett swore, hands reaching for a pistol. He moved like he had trained men to move, efficient, smooth, precise, toward the stairwell. She did not allow panic to rule her. She repositioned, recalculated, and fired to pin rather than to kill. She hit a rooftop vent at his feet, sending sparks up like a flare. He looked up, realizing he was being watched, but he still had options. Escape into the market, vanish down an alley, jump across a narrow gap. She could have ended him then. 2 heartbeats, one more calculation, a final squeeze, and a life erased. The word in her briefing flashed like a warning. Instead, she watched him run and let him go. This time, he zigzagged across tar and corrugated steel, crossed the market in a Babelsi blur, melted into the crowd, a ghost among ordinary people who hummed with midday life. She tracked him with a thermal sweep and kept her finger on the trigger until he disappeared down a narrow port lane. She pursued on foot, rifle slung, med kit secure. The town was a maze of vendors and clotheslines and children who ignored the way grown men moved through the world. Beckett used the crowd. He used the familiarity of betrayal. He ducked into a building and climbed to a hidden courtyard where expatriates met and trade happened under the table. She found him kneeling by a shipping crate, whispering into a communicator as if sealing a contract. He thought himself alone and safe and very sure. He turned when she stepped into the light, and for a single instant their eyes met. Recognition flashed across his face, shock, then a small, ugly smile. "You're the medic," he said. "It always was a weakness." Elena did not answer. She saw the pistol at his waist and the hardened posture of a man who expected death to be a negotiation. He had no intention of surrendering. He would rather vanish. They circled each other with words like low knives. He tried to provoke her, to make her the hunter not of men but of himself. "You came to save people," he taunted. "You came to put patches on them and kiss them goodbye. You think it makes you better." She stepped forward, close enough to smell the cigarette on his breath. "You wasted your uniform," she said. "You sold it for a lie." He laughed then, bitter and small. "You think you're different? You pull a trigger and you're a hero. I pull a trigger and I'm a monster. Same hole in the ground either way." She reached for the man's weapon hand before he could reach for hers. He was quicker than he should have been. They grappled, bodies colliding, a struggle in an acutely narrow courtyard. He found her armpit and drove an elbow. She tasted blood in her mouth, a cut on the lip from his knuckle. The pistol clattered. For a breathless second they were equal, both breathing, both furious, both human. She saw the opening and moved with surgical aggression. She applied a pressure point move she'd read in a medical manual, then crushed his wrist under her boot until the pistol skittered away. He screamed, a sound that was human and animal at once. She pinned him, cuffed him with a strip of paracord, hard enough to bite but not to maim. He spat in her face and smiled without humor. "You won't stop us," he said. "You catch one, 2 more will rise." She leaned close enough to see the tremor in his jaw. "You taught them to hide behind men like you," she said, "and they'll be stopped by men like me." She called it in, coordinates, capture, confirmation. Her voice over the radio was steady, betraying none of the adrenaline jag that chattered under her skin. They would extract him. They would put him in a file. They would take him away from the sunlit alleys and the markets and the children who would later forget his face. As the sound of distant engines grew, Beckett's eyes hardened to something like resignation. He said, "You saved them once. You can't save them all." Elena thought of the Humvee and the heat and the first bullet she'd fired. She thought of every life that had been a ledger in a ledger book. When the van rolled up and men in black stepped out to take him, Beckett looked at her with something that might have been respect or remorse or both. He said, "You're a surgeon with a rifle." She had heard it before from Holland, but this time it landed differently. This time it felt like the last strip of paper between who she was and who she might become. They took him away. Elena watched until the van was a dot in the distance. She did not cheer. She did not feel triumph. She only felt the weight of choices and the thud of a heart that had had to make them. Someone later would write about how she could have killed him, how a single round would have ended the danger in the instant. But in the quiet of her mind, she knew why she let him live. Not because mercy was easy, because some wounds required stitching, not severing. Some answers needed to be recorded, not erased. The sea wind picked up at her back as she walked toward the rooftop where she'd left her rifle. In the distance, a child laughed and a dog barked, and the market continued its small, stubborn business of life. She picked up her weapon and shouldered it like a man who carries both duty and doubt, and then she vanished into the crowd, another ghost among the living. They say legends end in silence, but hers didn't. It ended in a room full of generals, a folded flag, and a secret no one dared put into writing. 3 months after she captured Beckett, Elena stood in a Pentagon corridor that smelled of polished brass and dust. Her uniform was clean, pressed, medals aligned with surgical precision. But her eyes held the same edge, the quiet calculation of someone who had seen too much, done more, and spoken less. The door opened. Inside sat men and women with stars on their collars and tension in their shoulders. The room fell silent as she stepped in. No salute, no introduction, just her file on the table. Thicker than most. Half of it redacted. A general cleared his throat. "You've gone off script more times than we can count." Elena said nothing. "You disobeyed direct orders in Somalia, Yemen, Syria, and twice in Pakistan." Still, she didn't speak. "You were ordered to neutralize Beckett. You brought him in alive." Then she said, "Dead men don't talk." Another officer leaned forward. "You stitched people back together, and then you became the one taking them apart. How do you justify that?" Her voice didn't waver. "I never stopped saving lives. I just changed the method." The room was quiet for a long time. Finally, the highest-ranking general leaned forward. "You've done the impossible, again and again, but we can't put your name on a wall. You don't exist." "I know," she said, "and if you die on your next mission, no one will call your family, no one will fold a flag." "They've already buried me once," she replied. He opened a drawer, pulled out a black folder with no insignia. "This isn't a promotion, it's not even a job, it's a sentence," he said. "You'll be sent where no one else will go. You'll answer to no one. Your name will vanish completely." She took the folder. Didn't open it, just looked him in the eye. "Where's the target?" He stared back at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll leave tonight." She turned to go. Just before the door closed, the general said, "Do you ever wonder what your life might have been if you'd stayed a medic?" She paused. For the first time, her voice softened. "I'd be dead, and so would they." Outside, rain fell on the steps like a soft metronome. She walked through it without flinching. The guard saluted her as she passed. She didn't return it. She flew out that night. Destination? Classified, mission, unknown, risk, absolute. But even ghosts leave shadows. In the months that followed, whispers surfaced in war zones and safe houses across the globe, a woman in desert. Camo had taken out a cartel leader from 1.5 miles away. Medic in northern Ukraine had patched up 7 men under mortar. Fire, then disappeared before dawn. In a jungle lab in the Philippines, a group of human traffickers had been found. Tranquilized, tied, and tagged for authorities. No casualties, no prints, just a note pinned to one of them. You were lucky. In the halls of intelligence, her name was replaced with initials, then numbers, then nothing at all. But the ones who'd fought beside her, the SEALs, the Rangers, the field agents, never forgot. They didn't know where she was, only that when the worst happened, she sometimes appeared on a shot. One save, then gone. She became a myth, the kind that didn't fade, the kind you whispered about when the odds were against you. They never gave her a medal, never. Put her on a podium. But in a base deep in Nevada, behind a wall of classified documents, there's a photo, black and white, no name, just a woman with a sniper rifle slung over her shoulder, kneeling beside a wounded soldier, her hand on his chest, her eyes locked on something far away. Someone once asked the general, "Why do we keep that photo if she doesn't exist?" He answered, "Because sometimes the most real things are the ones no one sees. And somewhere, on a rooftop, in a city that's not on any map, she sets her scope again. The wind hums, the world turns. And the medic who became a sniper, the woman the SEALs never forgot, draws. One more breath, one more shot, for the people she never stopped saving.